Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me. And I'm back. But not with a what if, with a what if reaction. You might be wondering what we're reacting to. Well, obviously it's in the title, but here we are with Mr. Crown Fiend's What If the Saiyans Were in the DC Universe. Shout out to Crown Fiend. To make it clear, he suggested me to do this. I didn't just I'm going to react to this for free content. He wanted me to do this, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll take free content. I'm not going to act like it's not free content, because it is. But still, I just wanted to say shout out to Crown Fiend. If you haven't seen this already, go check out Crown Fiend's video as well. Show it some love. It's in the link in the description below. And, yeah, that's about it. I haven't actually watched this. I normally don't even watch what ifs anymore, to a certain extent. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But I do love watching his what ifs because they are always super crazy, creative, or outlandish. So I like definitely watching these. And yeah, that's about it. I'm not going to waste so much more of your time. And we're going to get into watching this what if. And I'll be pausing here and there to give anything that I feel or that I like about the what if. So all right, let's get into it.
Saiyans are one of the strongest races in all of Dragon Ball, but what would happen if the Saiyans weren't in Dragon Ball, but instead placed into the DC universe? That's what I plan to explore today in this what if story. I hope you're ready for this Christmas special, even though it may be a day late. But let's go ahead and dive into this new DC universe I like to call Universe 1110. We begin our story as Planet Vegeta is facing their toughest war yet, a war against machines that can adapt to new battle styles and strategies to overpower the Saiyans. General Nappa of the Saiyan Armadas and General Zod from Krypton are deep in the trenches of war, when they receive a call to retreat and meet up with King Vegeta on Krypton to meet with the Kryptonian Council. "I don't like this, Nappa. The Council has never done anything useful. Nor do I enjoy the thought of leaving our men here to die in these trenches against these damn machines," Zod told Nappa as he shot down another robot. "I understand where you're coming from. Just have faith that they can take care of themselves," Nappa would tell Zod as the two made their way back towards the ship. They'd be ambushed suddenly as the robots surrounded them. Zod and Nappa smiled before Zod would charge into battle. However, he was thrown to safety by Nappa, who yelled out to Zod to survive and make it back to Krypton, and to let the king know that Planet Vegeta has fallen. Zod would cry out for Nappa, seeing the robots shoot their cables into him as Nappa began to charge his energy before letting out a huge explosion, as Zod would barely be able to make it to the ship and have it lift off before looking down and seeing nothing but energy encompassing the entire surface of Planet Vegeta.
Okay, first off, dude, editing is crazy, bro. It deadass feels like I'm watching a movie right now. I just want to say that really quick. There is one thing that I actually talked to him about before. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Gosh darn it, I need to mute my phone. Let me mute this real quick. There is one thing I talked to him about before we even started, or he even started this, was a certain way that I thought he would do the Saiyans and how he would basically portray them. And off rip, you can already tell how they're being portrayed. And I think it's a really cool way of going about it. I think it makes sense for the universe. And in all fairness, if anybody's like, well, that doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, it technically doesn't have to make sense. He even said it's a completely different universe. So that in the ballpark of that, he can kind of do whatever he wants. But I just wanted to say that really quick. I think that's really cool.
Zod would make his way back to Krypton. Meanwhile, back on Krypton, Jor-El was working on finding a way to save both planets until he made a horrifying discovery. Immediately, Jor-El would rush off towards the Council. Once there, Jor-El would inform everyone there that Krypton was doomed to blow up, and that they should all evacuate, including the Saiyans as well. King Vegeta and the Kryptonian Council said that their own scientists have done their research and found no supporting evidence that that would be the case. One of King Vegeta's guards, however, believed Jor-El, that being Bardock, who was also Jor-El's best friend. Together, the two of them made a plan to send off their children. Jor-El, I know this might be a risk, but there's someone else we need to save. He's an innocent boy, but extremely powerful. The king has set him to be executed. His name is Broly. Normally I wouldn't care, but the thing is, Broly's incubation pod is right beside Kakarot's. In his anger, I fear that King Vegeta may decide to destroy all the pods inside, and I just can't let our race die. Not like this. Not due to the stubbornness of our king and your council. Bardock would tell Jor-El with a...
Okay, I promise I won't pause for probably an increment of like 3 to 4 minutes at least. But I want to say something about this because this is fire. Okay, so character-wise, this makes sense. In terms of sending off Broly as well because of how strong he is. And like I said before, there's a specific way that the Saiyans are in this because of like an allied Kryptonian or that shared fellowship, right? And on top of that, this is like in a way fan service, right? Everyone loves Broly. We all want to see Broly, and we all want to see Broly get sent off and be safe and then be with the main cast. Broly is super OP. He's been a fan favorite for since Z, right? Since Z, and so ever since he came out, and even after the remake, he's been insanely popular. So that's why I think I think that's a good idea. I think this is fantastic.
Stern look on his face. Jor-El would simply place his hand on Bardock's shoulder, telling him that they'll save them all 3 of them. While Jor-El and Bardock put their plan into action, General Zod would make his report to King Vegeta, who would be furious, but not for the reason that Zod thought, as the council would tell Zod that he was needed here and that his request for more soldiers and supplies had been denied. That damn fool, who is he to decide when Planet Vegeta has been lost? He's not the king. Luckily, he died in battle, or I'd have him executed for treason, King Vegeta declared. Zod had enough. That was the final straw as he shot King Vegeta straight through the chest, killing him as he ordered his men to seize the council.
Let's go!
However, nothing happened, as he himself was the one to be attacked, as Zod would force an escape. Going to King Vegeta's personal quarters, Zod had a plan to turn this around in his favor. As for now, Prince Vegeta would now be King Vegeta. Zod would rush in, telling the prince that his father had been killed, making him the newest king, with the council planning to abandon the Saiyans. This would all overload Vegeta, as he would have a hard time processing all this information. The guards would begin to swarm in, as Raditz, who is Vegeta's personal bodyguard, would try to acquire more answers. However, that's when Vegeta blasted a hole straight through a Kryptonian guard, with Raditz following suit but not having enough power to do so. Eventually, the 3 would all be captured, tried, and sentenced to the Phantom Zone. Meanwhile, 4 ships began their escape from Krypton: Kal-El, Kara Zor-El, Kakarot, and Broly, as all 4 of them would be sent towards Earth. The war would rage on, with many Saiyans and Kryptonians alike dying until Krypton itself blew up, sending chunks of debris heading and landing on Planet Vegeta, wiping out all life on the planet, leaving it as a tribute to both the Saiyans and the Kryptonians. However, with the explosion happening, it threw off all the ships from their original course. 3 ships made it to Earth, with 1 being lost out in space. 1 ship landed in Smallville.
Okay, so he did keep it the same. I didn't know if he would keep it the same, because he brought up Kara, but he did keep it the same. So she's I can't remember exactly where she goes. I think it's like, is it the Phantom Zone? I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know it gets knocked off course, and then she gets like basically put on like a weird path. But I believe it's something like that. It's some sort of like weird area. But yeah, so he did keep it that way. That's cool. I'm not as informed in terms of DC as probably most of you are, but that I do remember that piece.
Kansas. This was carrying Kal-El. with another ship landing on a distant island forgotten by man. This was the ship containing Broly. And finally, the last ship would land in a city where the military would come up and take the pod, discovering a child in it. General Lane would take custody of the child, promising to raise it into the ultimate soldier for the United States.
No.
Over the years, Kakarot would be trained by General Lane and the military
Kakarot's
to be the best of the best, with Lex Luthor coming in to make stronger and stronger training bots for Kakarot to fight against. In order for him to improve, Kakarot wouldn't just be a weapon. He would have been adopted by General Lane with the president's permission. Kakarot would have a great relationship with his sister Lois, as she would write articles about him and his exploits in multiple disputes in other countries. With Kakarot being Lois's brother, he made sure that she would always get the exclusive. Kakarot would also grow up way more intelligent. However, he couldn't shake these dreams that plagued him. Seeing a destroyed planet, glimpses of a war-torn world, it would cause Kakarot to always wake up in a cold sweat, with the only thing being able to calm him would be training, as he'd do push-ups and other bodyweight exercises along with weightlifting to clear his mind. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, Clark Kent would arrive and begin his career as a journalist. Clark would also be struggling with the death of his father, Jonathan Kent, who was killed in a bad storm. Clark would begin his new job, being introduced to Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. Lois really wouldn't have any interest in Clark, but was assigned to show him the ropes of being a field reporter. The trio would attend a LexCorp showcase, where Lex would show off his Metallo armor, along with many new robotic soldiers. Kakarot would be attending this as protection for Lex, and Kakarot hated every minute of it, but couldn't do much as he was personally requested by Lex, along with John Corbin. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Corporal John Corbin and Sergeant Kakarot Lane. These two upstanding members of the military will demonstrate to you the newest and greatest technology that LexCorp has to offer. Now, if you two gentlemen don't mind, Lex would say, motioning them to step forward and prepare for the demonstration. Corbin would be suited up in the Metallo armor and prepare for his battle against Kakarot, who would throw his jacket to the side and begin warming up. Lex would chuckle, saying that he can't wait to see Kakarot get smeared across the pavement and call it all a training accident, as Lex would remove all the safety measures on the Metallo armor. Corbin would be ready to beat General Lane's pet, as he called it.
Come on.
The fight would begin as Kakarot would start off light, feeling out Corbin as he slowly started getting into his rhythm, until Corbin threw a punch that landed straight on Kakarot's jaw, causing him to spit out blood and a tooth that was knocked loose. Kakarot would return in kind by landing a kick that would break off the face armor, which would infuriate Lex as he cursed under his breath. The two would look at each other as Kakarot could see that Corbin was going to try to kill him in this fight. Kakarot looked over at Lex, who would simply smile before giving a signal to Corbin, and that was all the proof Kakarot needed. Immediately, Kakarot would begin to lay into Corbin, forcing him on the defensive. Corbin would grab Kakarot by the arm before breaking it. This would be seen and captured by all the reporters. Hey, Lois, this might just be me, but don't you think this is a little much for a training exercise? Clark would ask Lois, who was visibly concerned for her brother. Jimmy would fill Clark in on the details of Kakarot being Lois's brother. Clark would use his X-ray vision to see that all the safety locks were removed and that the armor was way too amped up for a training session. Having discovered that, he'd use his heat vision to cut some wires in the suit, causing its power to be in freefall. Kakarot, noticing this and thought that it was possibly his best chance, would use his one good arm and slam his fist through the chest of the armor, ripping it off of Corbin, and would go on a full offensive. With his Saiyan battle rage in full force, he was merciless, breaking Corbin's arm in revenge before kicking him in the chest, breaking several ribs and puncturing his lung. Corbin was on the ground, bloodied and broken, as Kakarot stood over him, ready to kill him. Kakarot would grab Corbin by his neck, ready to snap it. Before he could, there was a hand on his wrist, blocking him from putting any more pressure. Looking over, Kakarot would see that it was Clark Kent that was stopping him from ending Corbin's life. I think that's enough now, Sergeant Lane. You don't need to go any further than that. You've won. Clark would tell him, let go of my wrist right now or I'll have you arrested for assaulting a military official. Kakarot would tell Clark with a serious look on his face, not until you let him go. I won't allow you to kill this man, Clark responded with his eyes glowing red as he stared at Kakarot. He attempted to kill me. This is his punishment. I'm carrying out justice. Kakarot will reply, wondering just who the hell this guy was. Not like this, you aren't. He deserves a trial. Let the courts determine its punishment. Otherwise, you're not carrying out justice. All you're doing is getting revenge, and I don't think you'd want to kill someone in front of your sister, now would you? Clark would say as Kakarot would let Corbin go, telling his men to
Okay. Okay, real quick. Oh my god. This does make a lot of sense. No head bump, obviously. Different universe. Goku or Kakarot in this instance. A lot more brutal. A lot more serious. I don't know how strong technology is in this. And some of y'all might be like, oh, how is a suit keeping up? But in a way, when you think about it through common sense, it kind of makes sense. Because you got to realize, there is no reference to gravity training, which is something that Saiyans really kind of need to get really, really strong. Because without gravity training, their bodies just don't adapt, and they get too used to this regular gravity, and there's no real benefit to training. And we saw that in Dragon Ball, and then going into Dragon Ball Z. So it does make sense that this would be the case. He probably isn't that strong even at this point, even though Lex helped him basically train via robots. He's probably strong in comparison to most humans and most like, strongest men, whatever. But obviously, I think the gap between him and Superman is probably even larger than it would be with him being at max power, as in him and Super and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't see this version of Goku being anywhere, like, I don't see him even being near beginning of Z Goku. Maybe he is like close to beginning of Z Goku, but that's kind of my standpoint on that. I just feel like it doesn't make 100% sense to make him super strong. I guess you could argue maybe he's like Saiyan Saga, but I don't even know if that's the case, because you're training under non-gravity, you're training with robots. If you make different assumptions, maybe you can assume like, oh, he got a bunch of Zenkais, but did they have a healing process that was quicker? Because Zenkais are all based on near death. So it's excuse me. He would definitely be pretty weak. So the robot idea would actually make sense, in my opinion, if you go through kind of different aspects of training. Okay, let's continue.
arrest John Corbin for attempted murder of an officer. Clark would let go of Kakarot's wrist, thanking Kakarot for doing the right thing. Lois would run up to her brother, but would be met with a cold and murderous look as he passed by her without a single word. Clark would know that he did the right thing by coming to Metropolis, that the world would need him if it was to stop what was brewing. Meanwhile, in LexCorp, one of the employees would be in the break room, about to eat his donut. Before he could, there was a huge shake in the building as Kakarot would be pissed, slamming his fist against the wall in a heated argument with Lex himself, which would cause for a prototype chemical vial to shatter on the floor, seeping into the vents. From there, it would drip down onto the donuts. Damn, Sergeant Lane is definitely pissed off after that Metallo stunt Mr. Luther pulled on him, and I mean, I don't really blame him. Do you, Joseph? Rudolph Jones would ask his partner, Joseph Martin, who was looking over radiation research while drinking his coffee. No, I don't blame him, but what can you do? It's not like we're in any situation to help him out. Hell, half the time I don't even think the man is human. I mean, he's able to rip tanks to pieces and fast enough to stop a bullet at point-blank range. Sometimes I think to myself what I could do with power like that. Joseph would say, looking over to Rudolph, who was beginning to sweat immensely as he collapsed onto the floor. Joseph would rush over there, calling for an ambulance. Rudolph would immediately be rushed to the hospital, where after hours of fighting to keep him alive, he would be pronounced dead. A full investigation into LexCorp would ensue, where Clark would be the lead reporter on the scene, where he began interviewing multiple scientists, including Joseph. This would be all Clark could get, but if he became Superman, then he'd probably be able to get more information. But Clark decided against it. He knew that he'd have to use his gifts for the good of the people. However, he also knew that there was no guarantee that people would accept him, let alone if people found out who he was, then who knows what they'd do. Clark would head back to his apartment so he could write up his report. Meanwhile, in the morgue of the hospital, something wasn't as it seemed. One of the morticians went to autopsy the body of Rudolph Jones. He suddenly opened his eyes as he grabbed them, draining them of their life force and reinvigorating himself. Grabbing a coat, he covered himself, heading out the door, trying to find his way back home. All the while, Kakarot would be back home resting after getting a prototype arm brace from Lex that would hold the broken bones in place, allowing the individual to still move the limb while it healed. Lex had intended to run tests on it at LexCorp, but decided to let Kakarot have it as to avoid any unwanted PR. While resting, all Kakarot could do was think about who the man was who stopped him from killing John Corbin. Deep down, Kakarot really didn't want to kill John. He had been an ally in the trenches of war. It was just a shame that John didn't think the same way as Kakarot. "Hey, Lois, who is that new guy that you were training about 3 weeks ago?" Kakarot would ask his sister over the phone. "You're talking about Smallville? That was just Clark Kent. It was pretty crazy to see that he was able to talk you down, but what was up with that look on your face after the demonstration? Also, while I'm at it, what's your interest in Smallville, Kakarot?" Lois would ask inquisitively. "I feel like I've seen him before is all, Lois, but thanks for the information. I gotta go. Bye," Kakarot would say while Lois was yelling at her brother not to hang up on her, which he did and then turned off his phone as well. Kakarot would decide to pay Clark a visit, flying over to where he knew Clark would most likely be. However, to his surprise, Clark wasn't there. But Jimmy Olsen was. After landing, Kakarot would go up to Jimmy, asking if he knew where Clark was. Jimmy would tell him that Clark lived in the apartments a few blocks down from there. Kakarot would head over to Clark's apartment, knocking on the door. As soon as Clark answered the door, Kakarot would just barge right on in, entering his apartment, telling him that they needed to talk. Clark would ask what they could possibly have to talk about. "I think we both know we're not so different from each other. After all, we're both aliens," Kakarot would tell Clark as he sat on his couch. While the two talked about their experiences, Rudy would go from person to person, draining them of all their energy. With each person he drained, the better he felt and the more his skin changed, turning a dark purple color. He was becoming more animalistic as well. He would be heading towards LexCorp to feed on more energy to get more power. Kakarot would get a call from his father, telling him that they have a problem, and he was needed now more than ever, as this parasite was feeding off the energy and wasn't hurt by any of their weapons. Clark would hear this and know that if things went south that Kakarot might need help, and this time he was sure that he needed to use his powers for the good of mankind. Clark would change into the suit that his mother made for him, his first...
Okay, Superman and Kakarot or Goku team up. That's cool. I'm curious if we're gonna see Broly. I don't know if we will. That might be like a different video thing. I hope we do hear a little bit. But I feel like we won't. But this has been really good so far. Really good so far, to be honest. Storytelling is definitely well done, and yeah, that's really all I gotta say. So let's just continue.
Ever Superman suit. Kakarot would look over asking what he was wearing, and Clark would tell him that his mother made it for him, and he was going to do what was right, and in this moment that means stopping that monster. Superman and Kakarot would both fly over to LexCorp, as Superman would actually be faster, racing in and slamming his fist into Parasite, sending him flying back and crashing into a LexCorp lab, that being the radiation lab which Joseph was working inside of. As Parasite would leave, heading back to the fight against Superman, a sudden reaction would go off as Joseph would be exposed to it, causing him to crash down onto the ground. Kakarot would arrive, asking his father what the situation was. After getting filled in, General Lane was asking his son who the man in tights was. Well, that's kind of a long story there, Dad, but you can call him Superman, and don't worry, he's like me. Kakarot would say as he would charge in, joining the battle. General Lane would be certain that the fight would be wrapped up quickly until he saw that his son was thrown down, crashing into a tank. Running over, he'd check on his son, asking what happened, as Kakarot would tell his father that all his energy was just drained by a touch. General Lane would be praying that Superman would be enough to beat this monster. When suddenly Superman came crashing down, cratering into the ground. Lex would come over asking what the situation was, seeing both Kakarot and now this new guy, Superman, both getting back up on their feet. Kakarot would tell Lex that this parasite feeds on energy and can take it from different sources, but the more he eats, the more powerful he becomes. Great, just what I needed. Some power-hungry alien here to take over the world, Lex stated. That's where you're wrong, Lex. He's human. I used my X-ray vision, and his physiology readings are that of a human. Superman would say as something clicked in his mind. He's Rudolph Jones, the LexCorp employee that was reported dead. He was just like a dead battery, with no juice. All he needed was something to jumpstart him. Superman would tell the group, why don't we just overload him and have him explode? I'm sure that's something you could do, right, Kakarot? Lex would say to Superman's horror. Of all the things, that's a human, Lex. He's alive. You just can't go around judging who should live and who should die. He needs help, Lex. Your company did this to him. You need to take responsibility and help us bring him in alive, Lex. Superman would sternly tell Luthor. I agree with Lex, actually, Kakarot would say, telling Superman that Parasite wasn't the same person anymore, and that he was only going to be a danger to everyone out there, and the only for sure way to deal with him would be to kill him. Superman would be firmly against it, and having recovered a bit.
Yeah, this is the dilemma. This is the dilemma for sure. Can you have justice in death? I mean, that is definitely the dilemma. I feel like that's a good way of doing it, especially because Superman, obviously, he's exactly the same, more or less. Like, he gets sent to where he was at the very beginning initially. Goku, or Kakarot on this hand, isn't the same, right? They were born or Kakarot was born a little bit differently. Excuse me. He was born a little bit differently, and him being sent off to a military, basically being picked up by the military, definitely would give him a certain outlook of this idea of sacrifice. So yeah, no, this definitely makes sense, and I like how it feels. It feels funny thinking that Kakarot or Goku, who we know as Goku, would say this, be like, oh yeah, we should kill this guy, right? It feels weird, but this definitely makes sense.
Superman would fly over to the lab, asking for anything that can drain power and redirect it to other areas. Some scientists who agreed that Parasite should be saved and given help would show Superman some gear, telling him that he just needed to attach it to Parasite and keep him from removing it long enough for the machine to drain him dry. Superman would fly over towards Parasite, attempting to place the device onto his head, only for him to be swatted away like a fly. Stand down, Superman. I'll handle it from here, Kakarot would say as he charged up a huge energy blast, firing it directly at Parasite, who would absorb the energy as Kakarot would be putting everything he had into it, causing him to become beyond exhausted, as all it did was make Parasite stronger. Why didn't he explode? He should have blown up from that. That attack had enough energy in there to destroy an entire planet, Kakarot stated in a surprised tone. See, it won't work. but if we attach this device to him, we can drain him of his power and eventually he'll revert back, ending this nightmare. And all the energy will be channeled to the city through
that Kamehameha
LexCorp.
wave probably made this a little bit harder.
Problem with that, right, Lex? As Superman stated. And Kakarot, seeing no other options and extremely tired and beaten down, would agree to help Superman, and Lex really wouldn't have any objections to this either, seeing as how he could turn a huge profit from this. Kakarot would distract Parasite as Superman attached the device to Parasite, and immediately it began to drain his power, bit by bit, with Superman and Kakarot landing blow after blow to Parasite, which sped up the process. It would eventually drain every last drop from him, knocking him out. The police would arrive and arrest Parasite, taking him to get the help he needs. Kakarot would tell Superman that they should have killed Parasite, and that he doesn't believe that someone who poses as big of a threat to the world as Parasite does should be allowed to live. Then what about us? Individually, we pose a great risk to this world, but we choose to do good with our powers. I was raised to do the right thing, not for any kind of reward or worship or anything, but just because I have the ability to do it and that it was simply the right thing to do. And honestly, I believe that Parasite is a victim. After all, whenever you slammed your fist against the wall at LexCorp after the Metallo accident, you caused a prototype chemical vial to drop and shatter, which then caused the birth of Parasite. So if anything, this was your fault. But like I said, I believe in second chances, and I know you didn't do that intentionally. We just have to be more careful. Superman would say to Kakarot while holding out his hand. You're right about it not being intentional. However, there's one thing you're wrong about, and that is I'm part of the United States military, and all of my actions are in the interest of the world. But maybe you're right. Maybe all anyone needs is a little help and a second chance, Kakarot would say, shaking Superman's hand, telling him that he wonders which of them is stronger. Superman would only smile before flying away. A press conference would be held much later on
Yeah, that is not
where
even
Lois
close.
Lane would
We already talked about that,
interrogate
but
her
it's
brother,
not close.
saying how he was able to get the call from General Lane when his phone was supposedly turned off. And that's when Kakarot
arguably
revealed that
that
he had
gap
turned
is
his
even
phone
bigger
back
right now.
on
So,
as soon as he
yeah.
made contact with Clark Kent and received more information about the LexCorp investigation from him. Then once General Lane made the phone call to him, everything clicked in his mind and he got all the information together at once. Meanwhile, Clark was off writing his own report and saying that he got an exclusive interview with Superman, the Man of Steel. This would allow Clark to put his message out there, unedited and spoken directly how he would have it put out there. And the people seemed to slowly begin to trust Superman and that he was here to do the right thing and to genuinely make this world a better place. Weeks would pass as Kakarot would be called into the president's office, telling him that he earned himself a promotion and that his idea was accepted, granting Kakarot the ability to put together his own special task force for these threats that seemingly begin to pop up, as he would call it Task Force X. And that's where I'm going to be leaving this video off. Now, before you guys click off the video, just know there is an end credit scene. So you just have to get through this little deal through here, and then you'll be able to see it. And I promise you, you won't want to miss the end credit scene. But let's go ahead and wrap this up so you can get to it. So, I just want to say this is my last video of the year. This is the longest video I put out in a while, and I hope you guys do enjoy it. I've spent a lot of time working through this script, thinking how this should go. Originally, it was going to go a way different way, but I decided to focus it on a single storyline with him and Superman, as Superman and Superman interact with their origin stories being so similar, it only made sense. But anyways, don't know if this is coming out on the 25th or 26th, probably the 26th, but I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and I wish you all a Happy New Year, as my next video will be out on January 1st, or the first week of January. Can't really say a specific date.
Let's go.
I hope you guys look forward to it, and thank you.
WWW.
God bless, and have an amazing rest of 2022.
God bless.
Mr. Luthor, he's alive. Joseph is alive. How should we proceed with this? I want him placed in the underground lab immediately and keep this hush-hush. After that Parasite fiasco, the media is looking too hard at us, and it's all because of Lois Lane and her interview with Kakarot and then Clark Kent's interview with Superman. Perhaps you could do something about that for me. Right, General Zod, was it? I'll make Kal-El suffer for his father's sins against us. And of course, you will have your fun with Kakarot as well, Vegeta.
All right. Hey, you know what? Not what I expected. Probably what I should have expected. But that's a hell of a post-credit scene. That makes me excited for the next part. I hope y'all are excited for the next part. But I don't need to say much after that. This was a hell of a what if, a hell of a video. And I want to give a really big shout out again to Crown Fiend for letting me react to this. And this is early, actually. The video hasn't even came out yet. That's why it's on a video player. So I got to watch it early. So shout out to Crown Fiend. This is a really good what if. Super intriguing. Like, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. But yeah, if y'all enjoyed the video and y'all want to see more what if reactions, maybe it's to people y'all want to see. I really only want to do it if the what if YouTuber reaches out to me and is like, hey, I want you to react to this. I'll send you the video, and then I'll post it, and then you can post the reaction after the original video is already posted. If they want me to react to it, I'm down for it. It does give, I guess, a little bit more publicity in a way. Even if they're a bigger channel than me, in a way it does give a little bit more publicity, just because you have it on 2 different channels and you have basically a lot of redirect. But yeah, Crown Fiend is a good friend of mine. So he doesn't even mind. He doesn't even mind that I'm doing it. On top of that, he didn't even give me this for the sole factor of getting more views. He doesn't really care about all that. So shout out to him. He's a good dude. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. I hope y'all enjoyed. And like he said, I hope y'all had an amazing year so far. You got a lot more coming from me very, very, very soon. I got a birthday coming up, so I might not post on that day, but still, we're here. I hope y'all enjoy, and I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.